What's up, everybody? Welcome to the podcast now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to go over two different PlayStation stories, both kind of coming out of nowhere, but it seems like there might be a pivot going on with their direction, at least when it comes to PC. And now this is pretty interesting to me. You know, we talk about Xbox, we talk about, how stuck are you in a strategy, right? Like, how are you able, can you get out of certain things, right? And we have, that Aisha that's talked about, the plan is the plan until it's not the plan. And you kind of think about that, you say, fair point. That is, I think, a valid response. PlayStation, I mean, it's not the exact same situation, but obviously they've got this PC thing going on, right? But coming from Jason Schreier, it seems like they're pulling out of this. Now, only partially, but I would say in a very interesting way. So they were on a podcast, or Schreier specifically, and he had it sounded more like speculation at the time, but he's actually doubled down on it recently. He actually said it's not speculation, but sometimes topics come up on the show before I'm quite ready to publish a story about them. More to come soon. Now, Jason Schreier publishes like one story a week, so that makes a lot of sense that if it misses that deadline, it's over. So already, you do have that credibility. Like, say what you want about him, as I just did, but he's a very credible guy. He knows his stuff. So he talked about single-player games. I believe he gave Wolverine as an example, but it goes far beyond Wolverine, that might not happen anymore. That single-player games are no longer, or possibly no longer, going to go on PC. So, the Helldivers of the world, those still would. The Marathons of the world, those still would. Any game that's the, live service-y type thing. Hunter's Gathering, whatever the Horizon, like something like that, would be probably in as many places as possible. But Wolverine probably wouldn't be. The next God of War game wouldn't be. And that really is a pivot, because PlayStation really has gone in that direction. Now, they've done different things with different situations, right? Some games have to wait 2 years to go on PC. Some have to wait 5. Some have to wait never. They kind of go up like right afterwards, right? Like 6 months. And then some never go on PC, right? Some ones that I think really would have done well. The Demon Souls remake, that's a good one. A couple others. But, those are different. They pick different strategies for different games, right? But now, okay, you're pulling off of that. So I just want to say a couple things on that. And I want to move to kind of topic 2. The first thing that I think of that's a realistic possibility is just they're not getting what they want out of it. It could be something about Xbox. I mean, my kind of conspiracy, like if I want to kind of start a console war type thing, I do wonder, like, well, do they expect Xbox to kind of start pulling back? Like maybe they got word that like Fable isn't going to be on PS5 anymore. And I don't think that's likely, okay? It's just kind of an option. It's a very unlikely option, but hey, what if they decide to change their strategy? Or what if they start pulling off of other things? What if, I saw some speculation like, okay, the next Xbox is going to be a hybrid type thing. It's kind of a PC, it's kind of a console. You're going to be able to technically then play PlayStation games on there, right? If you wait 6 months for the, whatever, Spider-Man to make it on there, you can play Steam through that Xbox console, whatever you want to call it, right? So that's a loophole in a sense, and maybe they don't want that. So maybe that's something that they're going to do. By the way, it could be more than one thing. It doesn't have to, in my belief, be just one thing. The thing that I think would probably be the most defining, like why they would, the leading, force behind it, I would say is the time and money to the results. Maybe it's the greed in them. I mean, look, companies make a lot of decisions based off of these type of things. Look, there's a couple of these games that have done quite well, but there's also many of them that you would think would do well and then just really don't. Was it God of War? I forget. There was like one or two single-player... Oh, maybe Days Gone. There was one or two single-player games that kind of popped when it went to PC, right? It did really, shockingly well, because the games before it didn't do so well, and the games after it didn't do so well. And well, that's kind of the long and short of it. While I don't remember the specific examples off the top of my head, I want to say it was God of War, but I also want to say it was Days Gone. It was one or two of them, and I remember they were on a streak of they're doing fine, Are they worth putting up? I guess that's debatable now, right? But it could be debatable. And then you have a couple ones that hit, and then you have a couple ones afterwards that just don't work, don't really push anything. And well, that's really kind of saying it all right there, right? Like, if they're having that Nixes that seemingly is doing 20 things at once, maybe you're burning those people out, by the way. If you're having this initiative to get these games on PC, and I imagine it's just kind of like that, the net gains, if it takes a couple million to put it out, but it only say it takes whatever 5-10 million to put it out on PC, and it makes 20, 30, 40 million. Now that's pretty good, but like, well, what if it's smaller than that, or what if that alone isn't really worth their time all that much, right? Mixed in with these other things, maybe they don't like this Xbox angle type stuff, right? But it is very possible, I think, that they're just not getting enough back from it, that they were expecting more, because these things I do think are cheap. Like, I'm not sitting here telling you putting these games on PC is expensive. It's not. But if you're only making a little bit more than it takes to put them on there, then, and you're also, in that exclusivity type way, that does hurt the brand of PlayStation, right? Because PlayStation in that way doesn't necessarily have exclusives. It has timed exclusives, okay? Maybe they think about that. Maybe they say, hey, going into PS6, we want this thing to have power, and not like technology power, but we want people to identify a game to the system. And if our games come out on, the age-old thing with exclusives, like what do exclusives do for a company or for a console, right? Like, it's not rocket science. I think it could be a mix of those things. So it's not, obviously it's not a confirmed thing. We don't know it for sure, but Schreier's saying it. So I think that's a pretty likely thing, and it's an interesting pivot because it's not really one I thought they would do. Maybe they would just be more selective, and well, they kind of are, right? Live service games that aren't single player focused, they would still go up, but then the single player ones would push back or pull back, which, by the way, it kind of started that way anyway. It was more of the multiplayer focus started it, and then they brought over so it kind of like snaked, like that's really the situation that they're at. Okay, so we had that. I saw this one other one that I just wanted to read through because I kind of found it interesting. So I've seen this user, this Sneakers OS, and I don't know much about them. I think they get a few things right, but I don't want to like judge their credibility because I just don't know. I just want to be honest with you. But I've seen that name time and time again, kind of a rising name in the PlayStation leak movement, So they say, and this is what the title, suggests Sony is shifting back to a single-player focus. So in a response to a user on NeoGAF, we're talking about games in the future. I understand if folks are disappointed with the output on this front, but there are loads of changes happening now that we'll see increasingly over the next 3 to 4 years that are more in line with what folks preferred from them. This isn't to say live service titles are done and dusted, by the way. And by the way, that's totally fine, okay? Now, again, I don't know how credible, so I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. But this wouldn't be shocking, and it also would be, I think, the greatest day of our lives for so many of us, at least the people that are maybe around me, because, multiplayer live service, they can be popular. Isn't this what we've wanted? Isn't this kind of the entire idea? Isn't this the best of both worlds, to quote Hannah Montana? To be able to have a focus on single-player games and release more than 1 or 2 a year, but then also have a live service game every now and then. Isn't that what would make everybody happy, right? Satisfies PlayStation, Sony, corporate people, us, people that like live service games, people that like single-player, everybody. That should have been the plan in the first place. Not make every game a live service game. Make a few live service game. So I don't know. Again, I don't know how much you want to read into that, but if there is and by the way, let me say this. I mean, this is all part of the same thing. I actually think these two things could be connected. I mean, I don't know that for sure, but you're hearing the strategy of pulling off a PC a little, and then now you're having this. Are they waking up? Are these two things kind of tied in any way where it's like, okay, here's the deal. We're going to do a couple live service games and they will be everywhere and we're really going to try with them. But we also want to reinvest in single player, and we want more of them coming out every year. And we also want to put those just on PlayStation, strengthen the brand, strengthen the exclusivity type pool. Could those two things kind of be combined? I think that could happen, and I would personally like it. Please, I've said time and time again, make a couple small studios within PlayStation, make a team of 50, make a team of 40, and get us a game every 3-4 years that's just mid-tier, size. Just get a small game out there, because one of those games could catch, You could have one of your own teams make a game like Kana, that we're getting, by the way, but why don't you do it yourself? And I'm not saying take that franchise, but do a game, and maybe it can become something. Expedition comes out of something like that. Kana comes out of something like that from Ember Lab. These are not gigantic studios. Why can't you do that, right? Why can't a small little fraction of Insomniac or Naughty Dog, why can't they make a team of 30, 40, 50 people and just craft away small games, 5-10 hour experiences, single player? They don't have to be long. You charge 40, 50 bucks for them, and you can make bank. And it's a small scale. You know, you're not talking about hundreds of millions like Spider-Man, but don't you kind of want both? Wouldn't it be nice to have both instead of always relying on the big ones and have no small ones besides what Astrobot, Media Molecule, sometimes once every 10 years, right? Wouldn't it be nice to have more of those? I think it would. And so hopefully they're listening, you know. I've been saying it for a while. I don't know if they listen to me, but let me know what you guys think. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.